All right. How have you been? You kind of, last time we talked, you had, had a challenge. The challenge being your coworkers who you normally used to do and lead, kind of like the weight loss challenge, right?
Yeah.
And then they were going to do it, and you were kind of being left behind, and so at some level you probably were going to try to lose weight, and you ended up overeating at the Super Bowl party. Anyway, so
Yeah.
we talked about that last week. Tell me how you've been since our session.
Well, last week gave me so much clarity that I was, without wanting to admit it to myself, that I was thinking about dieting again.
Yeah.
And wanting to be part of the group. And so I didn't have the anxiety of feeling like I needed to lose weight because I wasn't part of their group, but I felt so much better because all last week I just felt like I was getting back in that binge urge cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I couldn't figure out why. And you helped me with that last week.
What has happened to those urges? Have they changed since we talked?
They have changed. I wanted to ask you about like stress eating.
Okay.
Versus binge eating. Like, is stress eating the same?
Well,
is there like the mirage that this food is going to help?
Totally. So this is kind of residual, probably just habit from what you did before, and this is a great question. The difference between stress eating and binge eating. Let's just start with that. So,
okay.
And you would understand a binge is very different. Binges are typically where we could say a binge is something where you feel completely out of control. You are intending to eat as much as you can in that one sitting. So because you feel you have failed, and so you might as well get as much as you can in that sitting or in that entire day, knowing that you will not eat again later. So it's very pressurized. A binge is extremely pressurized, right? And it's extreme.
Yes.
It's large. Okay. Stress eating can be a doorway into a binge. Now, typically, people don't binge unless they have decided ahead of time. Binging requires you believe you have done something wrong by eating, right?
Okay,
and you have failed. So you might as well eat as much as you can.
Okay.
It's like a temporary space of freedom from feeling that you have done something wrong with the food because you've already failed. So it kind of gives you this sense of, well, then I have the freedom to just enjoy myself because I've already failed. I might as well. Right?
Right.
Stress eating can be a trigger to that if you're dieting. So the likelihood, if you're not dieting, in your mind, okay, because a lot of people binge and they're not dieting, but they're dieting in their mind, meaning in their heads they think, I shouldn't be eating this, I'm doing something wrong, this is bad for me, I shouldn't eat very much of this, I'm eating outside of the hunger scale, I'm doing something bad or wrong. There's always that moralistic righteousness in the wrongness of what you're doing, right, with a binge. So eating out of stress is a sign that you're using food to compensate yourself or to compensate yourself. you're more than likely feeling victimized by an environmental stressor, right? Perceived.
Yeah.
So you don't feel like you can handle it. You don't feel like you are strong enough. It feels like it's too much for you. Whatever it is, the environmental stress. Your perception of it is that you're inadequate, you can't handle it, it's too much for you, and you feel burdened by it. So it is a position of being a victim. Therefore, I am going to eat. It's a way to feel compensated for what you're going through. Why would someone choose food consumption to compensate themselves for an environmental stress that feels that they can't handle it, it's overwhelming? Why would someone specifically aim for food? As a form of, I deserve it. I want it, I deserve it. What is the point?
Because it's freedom and choice.
Well, yes, but I want you to think about this for a second. Someone that never diets, they never deprive, they have food in abundance, they can eat what they want when they're hungry, and there's no form of any way of restriction. Do you think they're going to go to food?
Sure.
No, not at all. Why wouldn't food be their go-to?
Because it never has been for the freedom.
Always, because it's not being deprived. They have it all the time, so it doesn't have the appeal. They can have it at any time. So why would they need to have a special occasion? They don't have to have a special occasion to eat. They don't need it. They can have it when they're not stressed. So why would it become something special? Make sense?
Yeah.
Plus, so that positionality of, for me, life sucks, I can't handle this, I'm overwhelmed, how can I deny this? How can I refute it? How can I hide it? How can I move it around, right? Whatever it is. Someone that has food at their fingertips at all times, that I really want you to think of that. Would they choose, I'll go to food?
No.
Just really try to now comparatively. So this might help you see this a little more clearly. Someone who is consistently depriving themselves, taking food, putting it away, you can't have it, organizing, compartmentalizing it into food you can't have, food you can have. It has to have. You can only eat these certain foods under certain circumstances, right? Someone who does that, what are they? Who restricts food? What are they going to do when they feel stressed?
They're going to turn to food.
Correct. Why is that?
Okay. Because food gives the freedom of
it's stress. The stress gives them freedom to eat the food.
Yes.
Because they don't have freedom to eat the food normally. Makes sense? Okay. Stress gives them freedom to eat the food because they don't get the food normally. So someone that has this food normally doesn't really have that type of power.
Then food is not an issue.
Correct. They don't go to food when they're stressed out or feeling this way. They might go to something else, or they go internally to address what's going on, right?
Right.
But someone who is going against our nature to restrict and to remove and to hide and to, eliminate, repress food, when life becomes an environment feels stressful, it can be an opportunity for you to say, I deserve to eat. So it's like I have a bargaining chip.
Okay.
Is that more clear?
Yeah, it does.
Okay, so what we need to look at now is, what is stress for you? And I will say, you're like every other human being. Stress is a internal fear derived from the sense of the not being capable of an external stressor, an external challenge, an internal fear that you are not capable of an external challenge. You don't feel, and there's no grace for failure, right? Because I could say, well, I might not be able to handle this challenge, but I'm okay if I can't. So do you see how that would reduce stress compared to, I don't feel I can handle this challenge, and it's not an option to suck at it.
Okay.
You see how that tightens up the pressure?
Yes.
So we got to figure out where it's coming from. Is it your lack of capacity? Like, I can't handle this? Or is that a perception of I can't handle it? Or is it an actual reality that this is outside of your ability? You know, is it like, for example, if someone said to me, okay, Robin, you're going to have to go and bench press a car. I'm not going to be able to do that. That's a legitimate, like, I'm inferior to that. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I'm legitimately inferior to pushing a car off my chest. So of course, if that is, I have to either accept that I am not capable of that, or I can go into denial, right? Where is around that? So the other part is, okay, is it a perception from inside your own sense of lack of ability? So for example, imagine you are given a job a raise, a title, and your fear is that you won't be able to handle it. But you don't necessarily know that. You're just afraid of that.
Right.
So it's not necessarily the job you can't handle. It's your fear of not handling it. So the source of the stress is from within you. It's not the actual environment you can't handle. Okay, let me see if I can. So there is you. There's the source. This is external source. I'm drawing this out of or challenge, and then you have grace around the outcome. So which is the problem? You have to be, there's the challenge that you have to be able to meet. And if you don't, is there no grace? And then is the challenge more than you can actually handle? Or are you just afraid you can't handle the challenge? Did that make sense?
Yes.
Ultimately, when you look at these, can I handle it? And it's in your head, or I actually cannot handle it. Literally, it's not possible. Well, the question is, do either of those two matter if you have grace around the outcome?
No.
Correct. So it really comes down to, is there no grace? Okay, so let's talk about what the actual stress was. What was it?
Work-related. It was coworkers calling out sick when I know they're not sick. A coworker so this was yesterday. And then another coworker telling me they're taking today off, which leaves a short today. And then my boss sending me out in the field late. And
Okay.
I was so annoyed.
Yeah. Okay. See, that. This is not stress. This is you being a victim. Can you see how you're resenting these coworkers who did not show up for work today? That's not stress. That's resentment. which you could guess we could say is a stressor, right? Because if you resent someone, that means that they are doing harm to you and you're pissed about the fact that you have to surrender to it. You don't have an alternative.
No.
You resent not having a choice.
And we have to pick up the slack, yes.
So tell me this, what does resent do?
Resent, for me, it causes me to seek, like,
Compensation?
Yeah.
You want to feel compensated. I deserve more of something. Now tell me this, if your boss said, okay, they're out of it, you're going to have to do this extra work and we're going to pay you an extra $300 or $500. I don't know what the number is. Would you still resent?
I would, because we're busy.
Okay, got that. Okay, so
just in general.
I get that. Okay, so
I hate thoughtless
yeah. So tell me this then. Would you still then eat if you were given a $500 pay to handle all of this?
Yes, because it doesn't change the
okay.
the workload.
Okay, so it has nothing to do. So you're still pissed at the workload. So what does resent actually do? I understand that the consequences that it has for you, but what is it in your mind? Why would you hold and create resent? What's the illusion it's going to do?
That I'm going to get paid back somehow.
Yeah.
Maybe?
It's like I'm better than them. It's like, what's the word? Resent is a weird way of self-defense. But what is it really doing? Did it actually change the outcome?
Oh, not at all.
Okay, so it really does nothing.
Pissed off even more.
Correct. So resent is an illusion of self-defense. Go into that feeling of being just, I have to do this because of that. What does that actually do?
That makes me want to release the resentment by eating.
Okay, eating is a form of compensation. It makes you feel like I am getting what I deserve.
Right.
Okay, so do you see how when I used money? What if you got $1,000? How much money would it have taken for you to be like, oh, no big deal?
Sure.
Okay.
Cash on my desk.
Right? Okay, do you see what I'm trying to get you to see?
That it's relative, it's not, there's nothing to be resentful about.
Well, resent does nothing but create poison. It's literally like, and then what'd you do? You punished them by eating? You know what I mean? Who does that hurt?
Yes.
The body. That has done, what did your body do? Wrong. Nothing. So the body is always the whipping boy. The body can handle this. I deserve to eat because they're punishing me. And this is unfair. So I'm going to make it fair. I'm going to get what I want. So it tells me, first of all, that you're depriving food still. I guarantee what probably happened, and I remember our last session saying, do not do anything about it. Do not do anything about it. You've been probably trying to fix the overeating you did for the 2 weeks after the Super Bowl. And that's where this is really coming from, is resent. You probably feel resentful that you have had to restrict food in your head. See how that resentment, it's like this overwhelming sense of my life is unfair. Unfairness. How much of that unfairness is attached to restricting food? At least in your past.
95%.
Okay, so 95% of the feeling of resent you attach to being restricting food or having to food restriction, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Can you see where maybe this programming for you to resent and go to food might be connected?
Certainly.
Okay. So when you think about resent, which is really the belief that you're being withheld, and it can be withheld from being able to go home from work like a normal person, being punished. Those criticisms about the outcome, whether they're sick or not, the reality of your work is what it is, right?
Correct. I have to do it no matter what. I mean, there's not an alternative.
Yeah, and first of all, can you handle
I've
that?
been through this before.
Is that something you can
I've been
handle?
through this 1,000 times. Yeah.
Okay, there you go.
Mm-hmm.
So is it something that, okay, so in terms of the outcome, which outcome best serves you?
The outcome of not compensating myself with food for feeling annoyed. The perception of that I'm a victim.
Yeah, that you're having to do all this work because those people are whatever you think they are. What if they were legitimately sick? Okay, let's just go there. Would that have changed the outcome?
Yes.
Okay, so
actually, it would.
That's that tells us something too, that you have beliefs that these people are what? Lazy? Liars?
Yep.
Okay. So is there no grace for them in where they're at, even if what you're saying is true? Do you think they're aware of that?
And aware that they're putting everybody in, giving everybody extra work when they're not at work.
No, do you think they're aware that they're selfish, that they're lazy?
No, not at all.
Okay.
That's part of it that annoys me. I don't think they have any self-awareness for that.
They probably don't. So should you be holding them to a level of awareness?
Oh, when they're not capable of it?
Yeah.
No. I didn't think about that.
Let me explain to you something. I have a mother-in-law who is always sick, and in reality, she's hungover.
Okay.
And for years, she would call in sick. Years, in fact, I trained her for a while, and she would call in at the gym, and she'd be like, I can't come in, I don't feel good. And I eventually had to completely shut her off. Like I said, I am breaking up with you. You cannot train here. You know, my mother-in-law. Do you think she's aware of what happens to people around her? Do you think she was aware that she cost me money? Do you think she's aware at the one business she was at that fired her because she was so inconsistent about coming in for a bunch of different reasons? Do you think she was aware of what she actually did to them the moment she calls in sick?
No, I don't.
Clueless.
Yeah.
Friggin' clueless. Plus, I mean, I'll think of all of what it would take to create, at the time in her 60s and 70s, doing the same shit for years and years and years. Think of what went into her becoming unaware of how this impacts people. How she was raised, where she was in the line of her family. She was basically a debutante. Clueless. I don't know if I'm just using her as an example of how do you think it would affect me if I judged her that way? The next time she doesn't show up or lays on the couch while I fix Thanksgiving meal while I'm 6 months pregnant. Listen to me. Do you think I'm holding resentment?
No, it's a waste of energy.
Totally. It does nothing.
Your reaction doesn't change what they're doing.
No, and it's not my job to make sure they know they're wrong. That is a positionality that is super ego. They're wrong. She's wrong. Sitting here and saying that there's something wrong with that. It's basically saying that she shouldn't be where she's at based on the thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of experience she's had since day one. That everything is wrong. She is a consequence of her belief systems, her programming, on all of the experiences that have promoted where she's at now. Right? So when you are playing the game of I'm right, you're wrong, what you're getting out of that is superiority. You're wrong. Think of what that does. And then to say that and then feel that you are having to, take the consequences of their wrongness. Can you see how poisonous that is? I have to do all this work because they're choosing not to come to work. It's from the outside, it sounds like an understandable thing to resent, be pissed about, because it's not equal. It's not fair, right?
Right.
Let me tell you something, dearie. Every time I talk with someone, it's unfair. Right?
Okay.
So the thing is there something wrong with that? No one is equal. So this concept of fairness is delusional. It doesn't exist. Except through grace, right?
Right.
So that's where you have to go, is through grace. You have to be able to say, special needs situation over there, special needs, they're clueless. They have no concept of how this impacts everybody else. But you know what? It is what it is because their boss won't fire them. There's no consequences. So I will do the best I can. And at some point, you just have to hold your boundaries around, I got to go home. I can't do this. Do you have that option?
Initially, no, I don't.
Okay.
Yeah. So, it's just kind of the work I do, so.
Yeah.
It's just, I need to handle it, or just not, I just need to not be resentful.
Well, you need to, you need to know them. You need to know this is the way it is. This is the way they can be. And it shouldn't be surprising. And you have there's nothing you can do about it except change your way of thinking about it. Change the way you're criticizing them as if they should know better. As if they're aware of what's going on. They clearly are clueless.
All right, I will practice that.
Right? What does that do if you get there? What does that do? If they are clueless.
Well, if they're clueless, there's no lesson for them to learn. That's just how they are.
Correct.
And my stress eating or annoyance eating doesn't change whether or not they decide to show up to work anyway. It has no bearing.
No, it doesn't have bearing whether you are pissed off at them or not. What does eating have to do with you resenting their irresponsibility?
It's me rewarding myself.
No, literally. What does eating and the body's need for food have to do with you resenting them not being responsible? Is there really any literal connection to the two? Like, does food actually solve their irresponsibility?
No.
Not at all. Nowhere close. But for you, it is a weird, it's not a, it doesn't actually do it, but it's an idea that you're being compensated for your victimhood. You're playing the victim in that position. They are persecuting you, and food will give you something to feel better about it.
Okay, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But does it really make you feel better about it?
No.
I know, you still are a McJudger pants.
Yeah, it didn't change.
Your position.
No.
At all. Not 1 ounce of change has happened. Except that your body is now under stress.
Yeah. All right.
This is really common. The victim position is one of the most important things that you need to see. Anytime you take I am a victim, what happens?
I think about food. Like, if it gets that serious.
Well, food is your compensation. You feel like shit. One of the things that I learned is I will never, ever, ever be a victim again. Ever.
Oh.
Ever. That's a choice. That's a state of mind. How do you like that feeling?
That would be a great feeling, because I've left that victim, so I thought, left that victim mentality behind. Except
With certain people.
now exactly. So as a child, I left that victim mentality behind, but now as an adult,
Yeah.
it's okay.
You can see this has nothing to do with food. You reaching towards food has nothing to do with anything. The food has nothing to do with this. It has to do with you putting yourself in a position of victim. And your reaction to it, would you say is kind of extreme?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What would happen if in those moments you said, I'm not hungry, I'm not eating? What would have happened? You did not allow yourself to compensate yourself with food because your body's not hungry. What would have happened if you said, the truth is I'm not hungry, food is not an option. So there is no compensation. What would that have done?
It would just release me from the victimhood.
It would have,
from the resentment.
what it would have done is you would have had to sit in the resentment, in the poison. You had to sit in there. You would have had to, because there was no way for you to compensate. It would have you would have kind of built up. It would have you probably would have started to feel rage.
I see, okay.
Now go back to the moment you were like super pissed. It's just unfair. Like people are lazy and you're playing the I'm right, you're wrong, you piece of shit. I'm the one that's now being hurt because you suck. Go back into that poisonous mind and tell yourself the truth. I'm not hungry. I'm not going to eat. I'm not doing anything. I have to sit in this shit. Go back in there. Would you agree if you did not eat at that point, the resentment would have continued to build?
Yes.
Okay, so you would have had to sit and recognize how fucked up you were. As it got bigger, you would have noticed, I am crazy, irrational right now. Yeah, you would have witnessed it. So your coping with food keeps you unaware of all of that. It keeps you unaware of what we're talking about today. Right? Because it's almost enabling your stories about these people and how you've perceived it. So notice how what I'm doing is going in and breaking it open and saying, okay, you need to see this differently. And you're going, oh, Okay, yeah, that feels a lot better.
Yeah.
Okay, so what'll need to happen the next time something like this occurs, it's really important you recall this conversation. If you are not hungry, you've got to be willing to say, I am not going to eat. Food is not an option. So what happens is then the emotions that you're using to or trying to escape are going to build and build and build. And it will become very aware of you. You would have, like, for example, in the moment of this experience, you would have been like, I'm so pissed. I feel like they have hurt me. And it would have you would have started to see it clearly.
Yeah.
As long as you're not trying to escape it.
Right. And food would do that for me.
Well, yeah, it's you're compensating yourself. You're trying to make yourself feel compensated because for some reason you're still depriving food somewhere. Either that or it's coming from your previous years of how you handled resent.
Yeah, I think that's it, because I have not been depriving.
Okay. Not even in your thoughts? Not even in, I shouldn't be.
Dieting.
Okay, good. Yeah, it could be that. So you have to really look at resent is what you need to recover from. So it's not just I'm recovering from binging. I'm recovering from resent. And kind of like thinking people should be better than they are. People are what they are. So holding them to a higher expectation is hurting the person that's holding others to higher expectations. So many people say, well, shouldn't we have high expectations? Well, let me know how your suffering goes, because that's what happens. So the person holding the expectation, constantly living in disappointment. That's what you get. Sure, you can have people to higher expectations, but you're going to hold yourself to disappointment the whole time.
Yeah, because you spend the entire time evaluating.
Not only that, but you're playing God, like you know what people should be like. I mean, who died and made you God? Very narcissistic, very egoic to be, I'm right, you're wrong, I'm right, you're wrong. How wrong are they? Well, they're doing what they're doing based on what they think is appropriate. They clearly think it's appropriate. They have whatever reason behind it that makes it appropriate for them. Do they need your permission?
Nope.
Yeah, so stop gatekeeping. That brings you resent.
It does.
I know. So the resent is a consequence of the ego playing the role of God and getting pissed off that it never really works out. Even if we can say this is unfair, it is what it is until your boss sees it himself and fires these people. Saying, do they have sick days that they get to use? Is it part of their package? Yes. Okay, well then you can't sit there and be pissed off. They're allowed to use their sick days, whether it's an emotional day or they're actually sick. They have a right to use those days. How's this making you feel? Is this?
I feel shitty.
Well, I don't want you to. I just want you to hear it. Like you.
It's because I see how ridiculous it is.
It's very selfish, isn't it? You were very, very selfish.
Incredibly.
I know, projecting it onto them as if they're selfish. You're just projecting yourself onto them. Do you take sick days if you needed to?
If I'm sick, yes. Yeah. I rarely take personal days where I need like a mental health day.
Do you ever need a mental health day?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, so would you be okay taking a mental health day if you have the days, knowing that they're going to have to work hard on the other side?
I have great difficulty doing that.
Okay, this is why. You're holding yourself to these standards, and you're expecting everybody else to do the same thing.
That's true.
Yeah.
I cannot deny that.
And therefore, you deserve to suffer. You suffered.
I want everybody else to care like I do.
No, and you can't expect people to do that because it's not black and white that way. You know, last Wednesday my dog died and how I canceled on you?
Yes.
What if it's something like that? I mean, you don't know that, but...
Right. Yeah, and they could legitimately be ill, or maybe they just wanted to spend more time with their family.
Yeah, and they needed balance, work-life balance,
Yeah.
to keep them sane. You know, there's a reason you're the one that is suffering. There's clearly something off balance here. Maybe you need to be kinder to yourself. Maybe this is really about you being kinder to yourself and not being so strict. Those paid days, sick days, really are things people should use. There's a reason why they have them. It does come down to balance. If you need to take a sick day because you're sick and tired, you should take it. What's wrong with that? Is there really anything wrong with that? Especially since it's in the contract. You are given those days paid.
No, it's not.
That's, I think, where this is coming from.
Like, I don't think I've had a sick day, or a personal day in 10 months.
Okay, well, you might want to think that maybe that's your problem. It's not their fault that you're not taking care of yourself.
So I'm the problem?
Yes.
And I'm kidding.
It's not their fault that you are not taking care of yourself. And maybe the way you treat yourself is actually really unhealthy psychologically and mentally. And then to blame people for taking care of themselves as being lazy people. Do you see how you're holding yourself to inhumane standards and now everybody else should do it too? Because if they give themselves grace, boy, do you get pissed.
It sounds ridiculous. It is ridiculous.
Is it aligning here?
A whining?
Is this aligning? Is this sounding like, okay, we're hitting something on the nail?
Aligning.
Aligning.
Yes.
Is this aligning? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, you're the one who's the asshole. You might want to take a break. People pay me a lot of money to tell them this stuff, just so that you know. It's important. You're resenting your asshole idea of what work ethic is. You're an asshole person around work ethic. Imagine, there's a reason why there are things in place for people to protect themselves from other people who have mental illness in the work environment, such as sick days, paid leave.
Okay.
You need to see that. And this comes down to your pride. At some point, you may have taken pride in yourself and inflated yourself as a superior person because you don't use those days.
Oh, completely.
Oh, there it is. This took a little bit, but we wiggled in and cracked it open. That's what it is. You might want to get off your little high horse, honey. you're not doing very well. This isn't praiseworthy. You ended up binging or, stress, resent eating. I mean, your behavior is showing a sign of, too much strictness. You need to relax. Should someone not take those days to prove they're a valuable person?
No, they should take the days they need.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with who they are. If you decide tomorrow or any day, I'm going to take a sick day, and I'm not sick, but you know what? I'm going to take it to just care for myself. You're entitled to that if it's in your contract.
Yes, it is.
How's that sound? That's a challenge. I'm challenging you to do that. How's that sound? You're to go, I want you to get a massage on that day. I want you to, go for a walk, maybe plan to go watch a movie. That's what you're going to do.
Right.
How's that sound?
It sounds nice. Very nice. It's going to take...
I called it a challenge for a reason.
Yeah.
It's going to take some grace. You're going to have to really question your beliefs. Go, we live in a first world environment. First world. You know what that means, right?
Everything's about work.
Well, it just means that we have everything we need, and the work is really just to keep things moving along. It's not like someone's dying because you're going to go take a break. You need to question those beliefs.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah. I'm telling you because my husband's the same way. He'll go to work horribly sick because he refuses. It's ridiculous.
Yes, I wait for them to send me home.
Yes. It's like, for what? What? What do you get pride out of this? You're making everybody else sick. You're more likely to get worse sick. I mean, it's just, what is wrong with taking a break? Don't complain about your issues of burnout, right? There's a reason those things are in place.
Right.
The way you're resenting these people is an indication of pride in what you're doing. You might want to lower that pride. Would you rather have resent and keep on binging to feel compensated? Or would you rather just take a day off?
Take a day off.
Yeah. Take a day off. You've worked extra hard. Which one's going to actually benefit your heart and soul? Resenting what they're doing and overeating to compensate yourself to feel better about it, or forgive them for what they're doing, be gracious and adaptable, and then take a day off yourself.
Be gracious and adaptable and take a day off.
Yeah.
And it probably benefits everyone.
Totally. Plus, people will be like, "Thank you so much." They come back into work. You can just be like, "Did you guys, you feel better? Good. Not a big deal. I handled it. Not a big deal. Don't even worry about it." See, the thing is, what you're not seeing is that you don't want them to do that for themselves. The response I gave you, which is no big deal. I hope you guys feel better. It's like saying, I want you to take that time for yourself. I can handle it over here. Do you see how that is like, they don't need your permission for whatever reason. They needed to take that time. They should take that time. They know themselves better than anybody. That's what they should do.
Right.
That feeling that I'm describing, you might want to have that for yourself. If I need a day to take it off, I'm going to take it off. I got to know myself. And I don't think there's something wrong with that. So what you're doing is you're holding yourself to a belief of work ethic that has no grace, no lenience. It is really quite abusive. So you don't get that lenience, and you're taking pride in it.
Mm-hmm.
So the desire for other people to take those breaks and wanting them to do what's right for their mental health, you don't have that feeling because you don't do it for yourself. You take pride in not doing that, right?
Yes.
So who's really the unfair one here?
That is me.
Yeah. Your belief systems are unfair. Where do you think that comes from? When did you begin this whole concept of work ethic, work to the bone, and then pride in that? Oh, you know what? I've heard
possibly.
This. Go ahead and answer. I've heard this before, and when you're like, I do what I'm told to do. I'm going to do a good job. It's kind of like that. I'm going to do better than I'm asked.
Right. I think possibly part of it might come from my mom because she worked very hard. Even though she couldn't do much for us, and we were homeless, like she was always working very hard. Though she never threw up her hands and said, "Screw it! If we're going to be homeless, I may as well not work anyway." She still worked to help us.
Mm-hmm.
So that's part of it. And then the other part was wanting the supervisors to think I'm so great because I'm always at work, working hard and doing whatever they ask me to do. Like their little whipping, like a little whipping girl, That's how, as the time goes on, I feel like when they rely on me, I start to resent that. Because I think, why aren't you asking somebody else to do this? You ask me all the time.
Oh, that's hilarious. Right?
Yeah. It is.
Well, you don't set your own personal boundaries because your mindset is to do everything you're asked to do. So your boundaries are set by other people. You're working for some external emotional idea that is benefiting the ego. So there is something here that you're getting out of that work that is not authentic. It's serving the idea that they'll like me better. This is like part of this recovery process. Not only do you have to recover how people see your body, but how people see you, as your work ethic, the work body, if you want to call it that. I wonder if you need to redefine what is your work ethic. When you talked about your mom, was she educated?
She started college and then got pregnant and dropped out.
Okay, so did she?
Several years later, she went back to nursing school when she had me and my sister.
Yeah.
She put herself through bartending school and would leave us at the playground to play by herself.
Yeah.
Well, she went to bartending school.
And that's the way it was back then.
Yeah, and then she went to nursing school, put herself through nursing school. So I admired her ability to push through the tough times.
Get it done. Was she? Did she have the best mental health?
Oh no.
Oh, okay. So let's
Not
really
at all.
rethink this for a second. I'm proud of her for grinding to the bone, but there's a psychological consequence to it, isn't there?
Yes.
Did she ever get like assistance?
At one point she was getting, yes, at one point we were on welfare.
Okay, good.
And then she got a part-time waitressing job.
Yeah.
And then got arrested for welfare fraud.
Okay.
And had to do 6 months in jail or something like that. Yeah.
Got it. Yeah. Coming from, that's a hard one, right?
Yeah.
Because you can't make money and still get welfare. You have to claim what you're making. And if she's coming from a state of lack and being overwhelmed and,
I understand why people do that.
Totally.
Completely.
Notice how we're giving that grace. But no, if they take a sick day, fuck that shit. They can go to hell. It's kind of funny when you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Just think about that comparison. How much grace and understanding we can give welfare fraud. I understand that. I can understand that too. But if someone uses a sick day without being sick, that isn't forgivable. Why is that? Why is that not forgivable?
Because to me, and I'm just realizing it now, but like welfare is like it's an actual need, like that I can see, like for me that's tangible, that I can see somebody need to pick up extra money.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't always see my coworkers' lives behind, Mm-hmm. I don't know their lives at all. I get met their families, I've met their kids, but I don't pry into their personal lives. How are you and your husband doing? Do you guys need a day off together?
Well, you can just assume that people do what's best for them. What they're doing is what's right for them. You can just make that assumption.
Okay.
It benefits you and it benefits them. For you to assume when people make decisions, they're actually making decisions that they believe is benefiting them.
Okay.
Make sense? You can just assume that's what they're doing. That's what I do. That's what you're doing. That's what everybody's doing.
That's very helpful.
Right?
Yeah.
So, you understand it from a state of poverty. Well, what about emotional poverty? Do they not get a sick day?
Yes, they do.
Good. So should you take that?
Yes. For sure.
This is Vespa. She's a neighbor dog. Hi, Vespa. All right.
Yay.
I'll talk to you soon. Well, let's get you scheduled, right?
Okay.
So let's get you